we've had a decent yarn there about Aston Villa and Leeds having different results at the weekend, unfortunately. But we've had a bit of a chat as well about what you're up to today, but it's a quiet one today. Is that a typical Monday for you, or is it not too typical?
I try and, believe it or not, finish early on a Monday. Now, what early on a Monday for me is probably normal for everybody else, so I aim to finish by 6 o'clock on a Monday. And we do late Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I just got back from Kerry yesterday after a weekend with the triathlon club, so I had a couple of things to do this morning and then prioritized this, and I trained.
Yeah, we talked about your training already. It's an interesting one though, being that in this industry you have to accommodate everybody else's schedule, not only your own one. So everybody else is free in the evening, so therefore we have to make ourselves free in the evening, which can sometimes leave you feeling a little bit spent if you do that 5-6 days out of the week. So that's probably the reason that you do it on a Monday, is it?
Yeah, and a Friday. I'm trying to finish early on a Friday too. And my little boy plays football on a Friday afternoon. So look, it's probably experience. It's come over time. At the start of the company, would I have accommodated every evening? Yeah, probably. But now I've got to a point where I'm like, you want to get into me? And now that I have employees as well, if you want to get into me, you follow my schedule. Now I am very flexible. I work Sundays, I work Saturdays, I work evenings, and I'm happy to accommodate because the industry, as you said, people work at 9 to 5, and if I'm not flexible, I lose out on the business. But if someone wants a specific time and a specific day, they could be waiting 6-8 weeks before they get that, you know. Everybody wants evenings. So we are as flexible as we can be, but evenings are sought after, most definitely.
Everybody wants evenings, partially because they're busy during the day, obviously with work, etc. But even with athletes, do you see them wanting evenings too? They want mornings?
Like, it depends. Again, I think COVID's been great because people have more flexibility. Like, I literally just before this, I have an appointment booked in for on Wednesday at 8 o'clock, and she rang me and said she can't make it. Can we push it back a few weeks to do an evening slot? I said, you're going to be at the end of May before I get you in. And then all of a sudden it was, okay, well, I'm actually available between 12:30 and 2:30 as well. Much more flexible now. So if you want that evening slot, you're going to wait. But if you're flexible in the day, in saying it as well, though, over the last 5-6 years, there's no real quiet time for me. It's just back to back to back. Just get it in.
That was what I was going to ask. Do you find now that you're taking on the employees, it frees up a little bit more time for you? But did you struggle initially to kind of trust and delegate responsibility?
Sure. Look, it's one of the biggest criticisms of me from people within the industry who I would trust, not as mentors, but as friends. For years, they've been saying, you need to get someone, you need to get someone. And that's all well and good. But if I don't get someone that represents the brand to the way I am, the level that I want, sure, it's detrimental to the business. It took me nine years to get someone, and I've gone through a couple of employees that didn't work out. Now, luckily enough, I have a couple that I trust well and that I would even class will be better than me in terms of their knowledge and their education, but about the deliverance and the protocols and the systems, it's going to be different. But the team that I have now is, I trust them as much as coming to me would be.
So then when you try to get people in, do you try to get people in that are maybe a little bit earlier in their development so that you can kind of mold them into the brand more so than getting somebody that's fully developed and trying to get them to adapt to the brand, I guess? Because there's merits in doing both, I suppose.
Absolutely. What do I want? I look for character first. Like one of the guys that works for me, I knew him, I've known him for 6, 7, 8 years, you know, and I wanted him. But he just wasn't the right time. He went off on a different journey in physical therapy and stuff like that. But his character, his rapport with people, his communication skills, they're all vital, you know. So he has to have obviously the knowledge in regards to the application of physiology and the data, but you have to be a people person. You know, at the end of the day, I'm dealing with 30 to 60 clients a week, depending on the groups that we deal with. And you need to be able to communicate. So that's a big skill that's required.
You've touched on it there a couple of times already, is communication and the delivery of your messaging and the delivery of the data. When you were working 9 to 9 or whatever it was, did you find that the quality of your communication or the quality of your delivery dropped off a tiny bit, or was it just the same across the board?
Never. And that's what I'd expect. And that's when people speak about the quantity of work that I do. My expectation for me is too high, probably, which is the nature of the success and drive behind the company. But no, you come to me at 9. So use an example. We do corporate work and corporate wellness. We work down in Apple as an example on behalf of Irish Life Health. We do 7 till 7. And you get a metabolic test with me at 7 a.m. or you get a metabolic test with me at 7 p.m. I guarantee you the service is going to be the same. It has to be.
So do you have an optimal amount of hours that you like to get done in a week, or does it just vary? You get as many as you can?
As many as I can, depending on what's in front of me. So if corporate wellness is required, I'll do 3 12-hour days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 till 7. Mondays will be earlier, Fridays will be earlier. Use the weekend just gone. I didn't do any testing on Friday. I came into the office, got a bit of admin done, packed up 2 machines, drove 3.5 hours to Kerry, set up in Kerry for a weekend of testing. So every day is going to be different depending on seasonally where we are. Is there corporate wellness? Is there a schools program? So the last week of May, I'll do a program I run in a school where I'll personally do no testing that week. I'm in the school 9 till 2, where we do not performance, but we do skill development, hand-eye coordination, movement. We do nutrition, we do wellness in that sense. I won't test that week, you know. So every week is different, and that's what I love about the job. Someone says to me last week, "Do you not get bored?" I said, "How would I get bored? I deal with a different body every hour, so it's not the same. Every job is the same, but I'm dealing with different data hour on hour on hour, or different bodies, or different types, or different goals." So
there's quite a lot of variance there in what you're doing as well, because like you're going with the elite triathlete down to kids that I assume are primary or secondary primary school level. Yeah. So like there's a difference there, because you're either coaching, you're educating, or you are testing, I suppose, and sometimes you're doing all 3.
Yeah, in a day I could do, if you look at my day, let's say we do metabolic VO2, we could do metabolic for weight loss, metabolic for weight gain. So you could have a male looking to gain weight through hypertrophy, we could have a female looking to lose weight, and we could do performance testing on, we do work with like the Irish Prison Service, we do it with the Coombe Hospital, on studies, and then we do it with people that are aiming to get to the Olympics. You know, so like it is a wide variety of people that walk in and out of this door all day, every day. So you never know who you're going to have. There is a massive variety.
That keeps it fresh for you as well,
absolutely.
Like, because you have a new challenge every day. That's why you get into it. But when you go into the corporate setting, how much of that is surrounded by, say, prioritizing education, or is there quite a lot of testing there as well?
Corporates can be a tough one in regards to a lot of corporate wellness people mightn't necessarily want to use the data, but want to use the service, which is obviously, for me, it's about getting them excited about the utilization of the numbers, which is what I'll always try and do. But within each company, there is athletes, there is people that are Ironman, there is people, and they're always sign up straight away. Or you go into good companies that have trainers on site, and they're like speaking to their clients going, "This is an unbelievable opportunity to get some serious testing done in your workplace." So 9 times out of 10, people are excited for it, you know. So, but it's a challenge, like anything.
What is your biggest challenge in trying to get people excited about the data? Because with certain types of people, they can't digest it, I suppose, or they just look at numbers and they're like, I don't understand numbers, so then I'm not going to be able to take this in. How do you get around that?
Client by client basis, I've learned to read people's interpretation. Like, I don't need to talk to somebody about the aerobic glycolysis if they don't know what a heart rate is, or they don't know what an energy system is. Or like, I really try and dumb it down without being insulting when I say dumb it down. But there's no point in me getting real scientific with people if they're not going to understand it. So I use the analogies of cars or houses in terms of building bases and driving cars with no fuel, and just try and keep it as applicable, or using analogies that are very simple to understand. How I get them to buy in is because I still get excited 11 years about, I know I get lost when I'm talking to someone that doesn't understand, and I get excited by, you can see them really taking it on, that light bulb moment, you see them lifting, walking out of the room. Now there is the other side of it, where people walk out that door, I know they're not going to change because they're unwilling to buy into the process that may take significantly longer than what they wanted, or I tell them they're not as good as what they hoped they were. Garmin predicted VO2s break my heart. You nearly get in arguments with people about it. And I'm like, look, your Garmin isn't connected to your lungs. Your Garmin is done based on a profile that was done in a study to design an algorithm. So we need to understand that this is your result, but it can change, and educating behind how to change it. And then time and time again, if you look at the reviews on my website, you know, I mean, nearly 300 5-star reviews in terms of the process and updating. I got an email off a fella just on Friday just to give me his update on his marathon. He originally, previous best was a 4:08. He'd aimed for a 3:30. He got a 3:09. And he was like, it's about the numbers, the application, and the success people see.
But that's the useful side of it as well, is like, you might say that I'm telling somebody that they're not as good as they reckon they are, but you're not really, because the numbers don't lie.
No. And
so like, this is the way it is. Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm giving you this message, but I'm not telling you that this is the way it is because I interpret it. It's the way it is because it is actually the way that it is.
That's your profile, you know. And who will I pick on? Runners, like, or cyclists, or whoever you want me to pick on, I can. They like, a simple example, you have someone that comes into you that wants to run a 3:30 marathon as an example. That's running a consistent 5-minute kilometer for 42 kilometers. And every single time they've attempted it, they've broken down. So what does that tell you? It tells you that they're running too hard at a certain stage. Maybe at the start, they might run 4:30s, and they're currently not aerobically able or conditioned to complete that event because they're training too hard. And then I tell them, all right, let's buy into the process, slow you down, let's increase the length of the runs, but I want you conversational, I want you running 5:10s or 5:20s, and you're not going to get injured. So the quality of the work goes up, the intensity drops off. I know, sure, what do you mean? Someone's going to pass me out? I can't let them pass me out. I'm like, yeah, but your goal is to run a 5-minute kilometer, not to run a 4:30. So it is, again, the acceptance that the process is going to be slightly different. And we've had some great coaches that have isolated their group and said, look, unless you buy into what we want, you're not part of my squad. You're not going to be doing, I don't want you as a client. I'm your coach. This is what I want you to do. But look, time and time again, not only in sports performance, but in life. That's what I love, the success stories. I've never thought clear. My work productivity's gone up. My mood has improved. My relationships have improved. I'm not as irritable with the kids. You know, it's a quality of life where you change your approach to training and to food and to application of calorie input or understanding blood sugar and balancing. And people are saying, I feel better, I'm performing better, and everything in life improves. This isn't just for triathlon or for running. This is life-changing in certain aspects, you know, where you look at the load of training, understand that it's a stress. And once they get that and they buy into it and they see the success, you have them then, and then word of mouth, you know.
But with what people will hear from that, I suppose, is they'll hear, sure, how can you change all those things with training? But you said it there, you're not just focusing on the training. It's a holistic approach to it. You're talking about nutrition, you're talking about sleep, you're talking about recovery, you're talking about digestion, other stress,
absorption, assimilation.
Exactly. Like,
yeah, like it's a complete program. It is an effect. And do I go off on different tangents where people like, you know, only came in for a VO2 test? But one of the things we look at is intra-race fueling as an example for performance, pre-post nutrition leading into an anaerobic session where there's a glycolytic demand. Like, people are looking at me, I never thought of calories. I never thought of, I need to eat more carbohydrate when I'm going to do intervals. Or they speak about going to do intervals fasted. And I'm like, what? You're trying to drive a car with no petrol. You know, it's not going to work. And it's them light bulb moments, you know, or the simple approach of fueling for performance, for life. So a lot of people come in and do VO2 and metabolic testing, but the approach is, well, I don't need to change my weight. Why would I do metabolic testing? Because there's a very good chance you're underfueled for performance, underfueled for recovery, underfueled for the next session. And then it's like, oh, I never thought of that. Just because my weight was stable, I thought it was okay. I had a fella 2 weeks ago, and he has a permanent 8-pack, permanently all year round. And his words to me was, he's 95% of the time, he's miserable. That's what he said to me. You know, and I said, what quality of life is that? He was eating 1,800 calories a day. He was spark, so 20,000 steps, training 6 days a week. His metabolic rate was through the roof. I was like, man, you need to step your calories up immediately. He put 400 calories up in a week, put 600 calories up in another week. This is only 3 weeks ago, and he sent me a message the other day saying he has never, ever felt so good. His lifts have gone up, his mood has gone up, his libido has gone up. It's only a young male, you know what I mean? Crazy what the education behind data can actually make to somebody. And as you mentioned earlier on, it's based on their data. It's not like I'm just making it up. You know, it's physiological performance data that is related specifically to the individual that presents in front of me, not their training partner, not the club pro that they aspire to be. It's them, you know, and it's not, and I probably shouldn't be talking about club pros. It's any Joe Soap that walks in off the street that wants to apply this, you know, proper direction.
Because that's a major problem, I would say, with people that are probably already physically fit, but also probably the general population too, where they think that I need to eat less calories so that I get and remain lean. Whereas they should maybe be thinking, if I eat more calories, I can perform at a higher level in my training. I can put on a little bit of muscle mass, and thus my metabolic rate will go up slightly.
That's the part that's missed. That is the part that's missed. You look at anyone that wants to lose weight. What are they going to do? They're going to eat less. So then the quality of movement, even your NEAT, is going to reduce. I was listening to a podcast yesterday on the way home from Kerry about how the simple daily activity will reduce when the caloric input is so significantly reduced as well. You don't even know it, but your simple movements are gone. But they never ever look at the effects of caloric restriction on performance. And that's something that is not mind-blowing. And sometimes I need to step back and stop being so critical in regards to how don't these people know this? But it's just not putting 2 and 2 together. And it's just looking at one goal. I need to drop weight. I need to get my calories down. But it doesn't realize that it affects performance. And if performance is affected, everything gets affected on the knock-on. And it takes time for them to realize. And this is the whole idea. What my coach says, I need to eat more to lose weight. Yeah. It balances your blood sugar, improves the quality of your training, improves the quality of your sleep, your digestion goes up, you're more fed, you've better proteins coming in on a consistent basis. It's crazy how much of the success can be achieved with application nutrition for performance. They look at them as separate things. I think that's the problem. When I say they, it's most people that are coming in. And believe it or not, professional athletes are worse in some cases because a lot of times they're told what to do and they don't take anything on by themselves. And anyone that I work with that is a professional athlete, yeah, I'm talking about you, like take the bull by the horns, get a bit of attention to, okay, if I eat this, let's do that.
Right, Seán, we were on a fantastic train of thought before we cut out there, unfortunately, but we were just talking about with athletes how sometimes they can struggle to take the responsibility themselves and think critically themselves. They just want to be told what to do all the time.
Look, it's part of the nature of the beast, I presume, being a professional athlete, where you're looked after in all regards. And sometimes you can just take too much for granted. But that's another aspect of performance, or another aspect of my job that I really enjoy, is working with these professional athletes that get significant gains in performance growth or in life happiness in regards to fatigue or recovery or stress on the body, or whatever. I mean, like the less is more approach to performance, looking at that high intensity training as a stress on the body, living in that parasympathetic nervous system, and educating them around, like, let's get in some adaptation or recovery sessions that allow the body to grow, adapt, and be ready for the next session the next day, where you can push hard, the likes of that. So the education on performance and nutrition is vital.
And we've talked a lot about the misconceptions around fueling, but there's also a key misconception that we've touched on there, and it's people not understanding volume and intensity, which are very basic concepts and people should understand them, but they struggle sometimes from my opinion and from my experience, to understand that intensity isn't just gassing yourself out by doing really long stuff at a moderate intensity. We want to be either at high intensity or low intensity, and they struggle to stay at that low intensity when we need to get the money in the bank, essentially.
I think it's a lot got to do with ego, guilt in regards to, I want my athletes to do a 2-hour session where they get off the bike or they stop running and they feel absolutely fine and they're not broken. That's an issue, and that can be guilt. Ego is if we want people to slow down. Runners that they will absolutely slaughter in a race, or someone that's significantly older passes them out, they can't accept it. But it's again, I know I keep saying it, is this buy-in, because when you get them to slow down and increase the quality of the work, decrease the quantity, they see the success. Their performance on their splits goes down, they feel better, there's less injuries, and PBs follow suit. They're not fatigued, not just in training, in work, in application, in relationships, whatever it might be. But the whole approach, and David Goggins doesn't help things, where he's talking about 3 hours sleep and going out and slamming yourself day in, day out. It is met with resistance, and it takes time. And I can understand it to a degree, where I'm telling people I need you to slow down. What do you mean I need to slow down? I need to work harder. No, you don't. You need to work better. The quality of the work needs to go up. Less is more. Do this easy stuff easy, and the hard stuff will be done hard. The quality of the hard stuff is very poor when it's always hard. So people think that their work when they're performing these high intensity sessions are great. They're shite, they really are. And then when we get them to slow down 2 or 3 days a week and buy into this lower intensity, and then the quality on the high intensity blows them away, they don't understand what's happened. And it just takes time, and that would be it's an area that is met with massive resistance, day in, day out. People telling me they can't slow down. And the ones that buy into it are the ones that get the success. It's very, very simple.
And you've said it a few times there as well, that it does take time. Is that ever an issue with people, that
Absolutely.
You're trying to get them to buy in for long enough for the success to be even achievable, because they want to see immediate results?
Yeah, absolutely. From the get-go, I make it very clear that this ain't going to happen overnight, and you have to be willing to buy into it. And I ask for a minimum of a 12-week buy-in. Now, in terms of a minimum ask for me, I mightn't see this person again because they've got their data, they're working with a coach, and they accept that it will take time, and they love it, and then they can follow up a year later, get a new test, whatever it might be. But there is people, and I know, again, when people walk out the door, that they're not going to accept it. And then you meet them a couple of years later, how's things going? Still haven't hit that PB, I've been injured all the time. People want results quick. My approach to weight loss is often fought against. I'm like, I want you to lose no greater than a pound a week. What? I want 4 pounds a week.
We'll go to Marbella next week.
Yeah, no, wedding 6 weeks is generally the one. And I'm like, look, you're coming to the wrong person. I'm not going to be able to do that because it's not sustainable. I could do it, but you'd be twice the size in half the time. Or you'd
and you'd be miserable at the wedding.
Yeah, exactly. But again, quality of life for me is massive. And people are like, what? You're happy if I only drop a pound a week? Yeah, absolutely. Have your lifts gone up? Yeah. Is your mood gone up? Yeah. Is your energy up? Yeah. You sleeping better? Yeah. What's your digestion like? Brilliant. So it is. But look, that's life. Now you get a client that's here in front of you that's 30 or 40 years of age, just taking them that time scale to get to the position that they're in. You have to accept that it's going to take a significantly longer period of time than probably what you want to achieve it. And the bigger the aims in terms of success, the longer the time it can take. Again, your job, your profile, your life, there's too many contributing factors that are overlooked for gains. So
did you find out the hard way that you had to do the 12-week time frame?
12-week for me, I used to say 8-week, 12-week. And again, this isn't based on studies, this is based on experience, where the concept of trusting the process or understanding the why, and not just looking at your times. So there's a couple of people that I'm working with at the moment where week on week, they're dropping a second or two a kilometer, and the heartbeat is down 1 beat. And like, this isn't working. I'm like, it clearly is working. Like, it couldn't be clearer. I thought it'd be much quicker than that. Yeah, unfortunately, but we're going the right way.
But sometimes it just occurs then all of a sudden, isn't it, as well? Like, because you'll have those periodic small gains, and then you'll just hit a week where things are flying, your stress at work isn't as high, your stress with the kids isn't as high, etc., and you're just performing well, and you just get those gains very, very fast, and they'll come to you like, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, and some of the gains can be massive. You probably heard me speak about it. There's a group of triathletes that I work with, Mick Keogh's group, KeoFit, and I always talk about these two girls. So they tested with me, and Mick was one of the guys that said, unless you buy into this, I'm not coaching you. And they came into me, and their threshold at the third point, or whatever you want to call it, VT1, AT1, LT1, we had to get them to run, which was probably a fast walk, 7-minute 28 kilometers. A year later, both girls are now running sub 5:28-minute kilometers for the same heart rate. That's 2 minutes a kilometer faster. Not 2 minutes over 5K, they're running 2 minutes a kilometer faster for the same or lower heart rate, because they bought into the process of looking for adaptation through stroke volume increase, where they are being able to deliver a greater force or speed or force production for the same heart rate. And it was the buy-in and the acceptance that they're going to have to slow down, which brought the success. They did their hard stuff hard, which was your stimulators. They did their easy stuff easy, and the profile grew. And that's the change that you want,
How much of that do you think came down to training at a low enough intensity that they were able to not get injured and just put together a huge block of training consistently.
Massive amounts of it. Traditionally, what we do was be aimed at endurance athletes. We did work with Valley Mount GA in first week of January. Dave Bean took over the team from a strength and conditioning perspective. And I'd worked with Dave last year, and he told me about this project that he wanted. The team were a great team, really skillful ballers. However, a lot of injuries, a lot of burnout, never finished the match strong. And if you look at a traditional GA approach, knockout kind of September, October, the boys down tools, do nothing, bring them back pre-season in January and absolutely slam them in terms of short runs. So what we got with them, this is a roundabout answer to your question, some of the guys' profiles were so aerobically poor that they were walking and they turned anaerobic. So they've no aerobic capacity. And then what they're doing is they're slamming them anaerobically. So what I'm getting to from an injury perspective, they played their first match, whenever it was, not too long ago. And I got a phone call off a fella to say he had never, ever completed a full game. His first game back, he completed the full game. And after the game, felt absolutely perfect. No problems, no injuries, no fatigue, nothing. And he was one of the guys that really bought into this aerobic base building. 6 weeks we asked for. So we did aerobic base building, real slow, easy runs, no hard intensity, worked on biomechanical movement, hand-eye coordination, tactics, strength. Dave and the team had a really good management team around them where they're blowing people away now. You know, very short. We're actually retesting them in May to see the data changes, to give them their numbers. So they brought in the anaerobic training in mid-February. Like anyone that's listening to this, that's GA coach, will be thinking, that's bonkers. These lads are blowing teams away in the last 15 minutes at the moment because they build aerobic capacity. And an analogy I always use is you can't build a house without a foundation. And if this team don't have a foundation, they're considerably more susceptible to injury, cramp, and fatigue, the higher the intensity of the game or the longer the duration of the game. So it offsets that.
I think that's the misconception in the GAA. The major one is what we just touched on in terms of intensity and volume, is they don't make the highs high and the lows low enough. Mm-hmm. They just go middle zone junk volume. So therefore, their aerobic base isn't good enough that they can recover well throughout the game, and they can do repeated bouts of high intensity. And equally, they haven't actually exposed themselves to a high enough intensity because they've been doing far too much volume.
I can understand it from a coach perspective. I really can, that the coaches only get them for a very short period of time, and they have a squad of 36, 38 players. Of course, they're going to slam them. Of course, they're going to train them as a group. This is where personal responsibility comes on. We know Alana Kelly, who works for me, she did her thesis on nutrition requirements for GAA. Every 22 seconds, there's an anaerobic demand for a GAA player. 40% of the game is anaerobic. However, 60% is aerobic, and it's completely neglected. Get your head around that one.
And I think that a lot of it is they struggle to understand or even see how little they have to do themselves to actually develop that aerobic system. Yep. So then they don't buy into it because they ask, there's no point. Because I'm never going to do it.
Yeah, so getting a couple of the boys, and I said, like, my concept was to them, like, you don't have to not go and have the social aspect of training with your mates. Get someone. So I spoke to the whole group of them. They all knew their speeds at breakdowns. I told them, I said, get someone that's similar to you and do laps of the pitch. So you're in the environment, you're on the field, you're in your boots, you're not going slogging and running. All I want is 30 minutes. And I want you to be conversational the whole time. When it finishes, I want you to go. That was easy. It's exactly how you should feel. And then in 6 weeks, we'll bring in a bit more kind of the shuttle runs or the line runs, where we start to bring in that anaerobic response. But for now, let's build a base. Base. I talk about it consistently. The marathon, for an example, we'll run a 20 weeks to a better marathon program, which will start in late May, early June, late May, I think. And last week in May, we need all our athletes tested, and we will build aerobic capacity. We will have majority of our training in this green zone as we build. And then 10 weeks later, we'll retest you. Hopefully, based on what we do, your thresholds will all have increased, your aerobic capacity will increase, you'll get new numbers, you can run faster as we bring you towards that event. Use that as an example. I'll always remember one fella run on this program. He wanted to run a 3:30 marathon, or maybe a 3:15 marathon. And I told him, test one, he wasn't able. I said, you are not currently in a position to run the pace that you want to run. I am. I'm like, but what's happened to you previously? I always get injured. And I say, okay, so what you've currently done isn't working. So let's go into this. 10 weeks later, I got him back. And his data had gone backwards. And I was like, what's the story here, buddy? You're not buying into this. Nah, I can't do that low stuff. I'm like, so what are you doing? So you're doing everything anaerobic. You're doing everything at this kind of mediocre 7, 6 RPE scale. And I was like, look, you nearly need to buy into this. Yeah, Grant. He didn't. Race day, I always go into the Dublin Marathon. I track all my athletes, and he was flying, you know. And look, I would have been delighted if he proved me wrong. Unfortunately, he didn't. He blew up early. He wanted a 3:15 marathon. He did a 4:30. And I met him on the finish line. I spoke to him after. I said, well, what happened? Because I blew up. I wasn't able to perform the pace. I said, look, I told you this was going to happen. And he was very accepting of it and admitted he was wrong. Joined the program the next year, smashed the PB, you know, because of the fact that he then bought into the process. The willingness to slow down isn't there because guilt is a massive aspect of it, where they're not breaking their back. They're not sweating. They're not fatigued. They're not sore. And it's crazy. And I will forever have a job because I don't think it's ever going to change.
It's the same thought pattern as the coach though as well. And it's kind of, you could put it down to what you'd call nearly a scarcity mindset, in that, as you said, oh geez, we've no time. We need to batter ourselves or batter the players in order to get these gains. Whereas slow down, we've loads of time.
Yeah.
Let's just slow down, take it day by day and increase it progressively. And then we'll get to where we want to go. And we'll also probably get there faster than everybody else, because everybody else is just flogging themselves.
But the picture is often missed, the bigger picture. So they might use one parameter where realistically your strength is up, your mood is up, your recovery is up, your sleep is up, your work productivity is up, your relationships are up. You're performing consistently with no injuries. However, you're running 2 seconds slower on 100 meters. So what?
You're not running 100 meters anyway. Like
exactly. But as an example, as of whatever parameter you want to put in, or a 3K run test. Why are you doing a 3K run test?
Don't get me started. Mate, I have a slightly different approach, I'd say, but rooted in the same principles of the high-low, I suppose. And like it's amazing the differences that the athletes see when they do actually genuinely buy into it. And not to call people out, but we might as well, because you're calling out people earlier. Some athletes said to me, it's funny that the lads that didn't buy into the off-season program are the lads that are suffering niggles and getting injured, because we've progressed it over time, and they haven't got the low intensity stuff in the bank. They haven't built that base that you're talking about.
There.
Yeah, exactly. So jumping in and out your training or going with short bursts of intensity is never going to be better than being consistent and then progressing it slowly, as you've just alluded to. But I'm interested to bring it back to what you talked about going down to Kerry with the triathletes, because it sounds like you were doing quite a lot of testing with them. What are the challenges of testing the triathletes? Because you're testing athletes that are in one sport, but effectively they're doing 3.
It's very difficult. What are the challenges? The challenge is massively, number one that comes to your mind. These guys are, now I do work with pros, but these guys are amateur athletes that have full-time jobs, have families, and train 14 times a week. Have no consideration for nutrition, have no consideration for sleep, have no consideration for optimizing performance, and have this white-knuckled approach to exercise where everything has to be done at high intensities. Again, missing the concept of you're about to do an event for 14 hours, but yes, you're running all your sessions, and all your bike sessions are done way too easy. The recovery sessions are too easy. A fella said to me on Saturday, Monday evenings are recovery, and he gets off the bike and he does Swift or Trainer Road, and he's shattered because somebody takes off and everyone chases them. And so what are the challenges? The challenges is education. The challenges is awareness about the bigger picture, and the buy-in that lately over the last, COVID obviously, but over the last 12 months, a lot more triathletes are availing of metabolic testing with VO2 testing to understand caloric requirement. And that is based on this kind of approach of I'm tired, I'm fatigued, I don't have the energy to push, or inter-race fueling. There's lots of challenges. And remember, they're different disciplines, as you mentioned. So your data from your bike is different to your run. So you need to know and understand the loads for the week. So we can't have too much high intensity. We have to have some low intensity. We need to be ready for recovery for hard session on a bike to lead into an easy session on a run, or a brick session that's going to be fatiguing. And the next session has to be understood. Are you only training late in the evening and then your sleep quality goes down? What if we take half an hour back here, have our meal earlier in the day? Again, looking at the bigger picture is, I think, one of the most difficult things with triathletes, and trying to educate the reason behind proper performance rather than white knuckle training. When I say white knuckle, gritted teeth.
Yeah, exactly.
Pushing.
Battering yourself essentially is what we're saying. But you've said it there again and again and again. And what from the outside, people looking in would probably think, oh, Seán does the VO2 testing. But like a large amount of the job, especially with endurance athletes, because it looks like it, or it sounds like it's commonly missed, is around nutrition and education around nutrition. Why do you think there's a culture in endurance sports of that, just under fueling consistently?
I don't know. It's an area that I want to, and I believe will evergreen my company. I plan to go back to do and get a master's in exercise nutrition. Over the last year or 2 years, it just hasn't materialized, but it's something that I'm still aiming to do, because it's an area that's just massively missed. And I think, and I could be wrong on this, it's because they're amateur, you know, and it's just not like triathlon should really have a fourth consideration, nutrition. And then you're like, okay, is there strength and conditioning? What's your sleep like? So all of a sudden the picture gets too big. And time again, people talk to me about increasing their power on the bike. I say, oh, what strength and conditioning do you do? What? I'm like, okay, well, that's a miss. But use and crossing over, and we can link back to this, looking at those who want to lose weight, getting to the gym 6 days a week, but not doing a supermarket shop. Getting to the gym 6 days a week and having no clue what they're eating on Wednesday, not having any snack ideas. Take the sessions back, understand the objective, critically evaluate. People are too indebted or involved in their own training to be critical of what their goal is and what steps are needed to take them there to it. When you step out of you, and that's my job, is that I'm the critical evaluator of what they're doing, then it's made aware to them and they're thinking, okay, we need to now add this and this and this in. It's very demanding. You're a family, full-time job, and you're training 14 times a week without any S&C. You know, like where do you fit it in?
I think with the S&C as well, there's a culture in endurance sports in particular that, oh, I need to be lean, I need to be light, I don't want to put on muscle. And I think there's, well, it's in the GAA as well, especially with the ladies. They think that they're going to put on muscle really, really quickly. And I'm like, ladies, I've been trying to put on muscle for 10 years and still not having it.
Do. And that is something that's still, like, even weight loss, I speak about weight training for females. I don't want to build muscle. You're not going to. It's incredibly difficult to do. Do you know that you said something though, but I disagree. It's something that I'm still confused, but not confused because I understand why, but how there's so many overweight triathletes.
I would assume it's probably because it's definitely because of their nutrition and partially because of their sleep as well, I would imagine. But they're under fueling for their training, then they're chronically overtrained, so their sleep suffers, and they're probably not eating enough protein at the same time.
But they're chronically under fueled for performance, which leads to chronic overeating post training.
Yes, of the wrong food,
of the wrong highly palatable food, or the concept that if I go out for 4 hours, I'm burning a certain amount of calories, but on that journey, we're going to stop and we're going to get a cream cake. We're going to get a specialty coffee. I'm going to have 15 gels. I'm going to eat 312 gel blocks on my way. Believe it or believe it not, the caloric input consumed for a lot of athletes can be significantly over, not specific sports performance nutrition. Looking at it from a profile development of under fueled for performance, overeating because of satiety, overeating because of blood sugar imbalancing, overeating because of hormone regulation, whatever it might be. I spoke to one girl yesterday about the concept of she needs to fuel better for performance and stop overeating. And this is the whole approach of I need to eat more to lose weight.
But in endurance sports as well, it seems that a lot of the time they don't actually understand how much protein that they have to eat, and they don't know what foods they can actually get a high amount of protein for. from. So then when they do go for the protein, they're saying, oh, sure, I had a milk or I had a shake or whatever today. So that's my protein for the day.
Done.
Yeah, I'm finished. But
That's
at the same time,
on my sandwich.
all of the options you just said are all carb options because they don't have the protein there. So satiety is low. So then they're not full. So they're just eating high sugar things to keep their blood sugar up and keep on the go and satisfy their cravings.
Absolutely. Well, like they all chase the lightest frame bikes, the 1200 milligram wheels, but they're not willing to change body composition, or they're 2 stone overweight.
Yeah.
You know, so if we look at weight from a performance perspective, first of all, they have to carry the weight. Second of all, that weight requires energy. Third of all, that weight requires oxygen. That oxygen is going to starve a working muscle of it. And it's the knock-on, or you say to somebody, I'll give you a bag of sugar, carry that up a hill. No, I'll give you 12 of them. You're not going to carry them. And that all requires oxygen. So we get the buy-in, drop the body weight, VO2 goes up, oxygen availability goes up, oxygen to working muscles goes up, aerobic base goes up. And then the education behind proper performance nutrition in regards to inter-race, post, pre, and getting that buy-in and the concept on just how successful and how undervalued nutrition is for performance with endurance sport.
How much of it do you think comes down to misunderstanding changing body composition? They think, I don't want to put on muscle because I'm already overweight, so I'll put on weight. But if we put on a little bit of muscle, your body composition will change and you may very well stay the same weight.
Do you know
or
what?
drop weight.
I don't even think that's a thought.
Do you not think so? No.
That never crosses these athletes' minds.
Why are they not doing strength and conditioning then? Do you think it's a culture thing?
They would class that they don't have time. So again, it's a very demanding sport. You know, there's serious required training loads. However, again, it's quality over quantity.
Once a week, like if they did 1 by 20 or whatever, when they did some basic
mobility work.
True.
You know,
are they not even doing that? Is that the level that we're talking? Yeah. But I would imagine then their hips are just, and their shoulders.
Sure, look at their in position on a TT bike for 4 or 6 hours. Hip impingements, you know.
How are you going to generate force then if you're not doing mobility? Is strength work at the end of the day as well?
Yeah, true. And they probably look at the week as just a week. They're not looking at it as a 10-day cycle or a 14-day cycle or a 21-day cycle. It's just 7 days. I need to train this amount of times in this 7 days. End of story.
And they're not looking at what they're doing within that session. It's just session done, tick, box, done, next.
In the pool today, ran yesterday, yeah, great.
And I feel knackered, so I must be doing something right.
Exactly, you know. It is very demanding. I've never done one, and I'm in massive awe, and I respect every single one that does it, you know. I just think that the higher the level, it doesn't always get better either. I have some pro athletes that I work with now, they would be a bit better, but again, some of them aren't doing any essence. You know,
it's funny, isn't it? Because in your unique position, you're working with multiple athletes in multiple different sports. So you can see that we're talking on this side that they're not doing any strength and conditioning in the endurance sports. But equally, when you go into the GAA, then they're just doing strength work and they're doing no aerobic work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you probably see a lot of things that could be taken from one sport and put into another sport that would be useful in that sport.
Absolutely. Yeah, without doubt.
Do you take anything yourself then to put into your own Muay Thai training from different sports?
No.
Should you?
No, because it's done so wrong. Well, my own training is done based on what my knowledge in the field of why I'm doing what I'm doing, how I'm getting there, how long the journey is going to take, have I had enough rest, what's my fuel like. At this current moment in time, I've never trained better, I've never lifted heavier, and I put that a lot down to, obviously I've got a good program where I'm pushing myself, but I've put an emphasis on fueling pre-training. Fueling pre-session. Like Muay Thai, I could start, like if I'm having a tough Muay Thai session, I could start having a higher carb load the day before, and people are like, all you're doing is training. Like, I'm not fighting, but it's something that I want to be able to deliver high performance for that training session, come out of that training session unscathed, recovery ready to play. I'm only training once a day. I don't train 6 days a week. I'm just training for myself. I'm not training for anything. And if I put the attention to detail on it, now I'm in a privileged position where I can understand and I can lean on coaches in various different areas of performance to help me generate force from my hip or from my glute. I have nutrition. I can physiological test for my runs when I go out and aerobically run. Yes, I'm pre-exposed to a much higher level of accessible tutoring and direction. However, it comes on me to apply it. And if I'm fatigued and I haven't had good sleep and my sleep is, or my food has been poor, that session that was planned mightn't get done because I'm like, it's not going to be beneficial for me. I'm going to put it on to the next day and not chasing back sessions. It's gone. I've had a recovery. I've ate more. I've had a better quality of greens, more water, better quantity of fats and protein, and I'll get a good night's sleep tonight and I go in tomorrow.
Sounds like you struggled with that in the past, though, in that you would previously have chased back sessions.
And you could end up chasing back and doing 2 sessions in a day or whatever it is. And again, people might think I'm mad. I'm not competing.
That's Muay Thai, though.
I'm not competing. This is just enjoyment. You know, this is the sport. I got really into running. Lockdown. I was a lockdown runner without doubt. I never ever. People just presume I run because it's VO2. Everyone presumes I run a marathon. If a cyclist comes in, everyone presumes I cycle. But I got into running and it really became really good for my mind where I could go out and just run. I didn't put on music and I got really into it and I bought into it. However, I would be like, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do a longer run today. Pace will be lower. Glycolytic load doesn't need to be high. Or tomorrow I'm doing 400s. I need high carbohydrate leading into this. And again, getting as much bang for my buck out of the session that I do, you know, so it's just applying what I know.
Have you competed in Muay Thai before, ever?
No.
But there is a bit of a culture in Muay Thai of lots of endurance work. Would that be the same in Ireland as it is overseas?
You mean like traditional Thais going for runs in the morning? So my first introduction to Muay Thai was in Thailand. I never threw a punch or kick in my life. I did
crazy training there.
I did a 6-week camp, 6 hours a day.
I knew you were going
for 6 days a week. You know,
and then they finish and they just go smoke fags and go to eat anything.
Yeah. However, you'll always start the session where it would be that long, slow intensity, long, slow, comfortable conversational run. Now, this is an area that I would disagree with other coaches within the field of sports performance. I'm a firm believer of aerobic based conditioning, although not sports specific. It plays a role in life, it plays a role in adaptation, it plays a role in training volume, training quality, where we can build aerobic capacity. I can argue that if I can get you to perform at a higher rate with a higher utilization of oxygen versus your opponent, that is going to have a benefit on performance. Now, I understand it's not sports specific in regards to, I do try and do sports specific coaching where we would be applying heart rates, but in sparring, hitting pads, doing bag work, not going out massively and doing slamming yourself. And this is something in the past that I would have done where I would have been more directing athletes, specific in fighting athletes or MMA athletes, where we would do high intensity conditioning on a treadmill or on a row or whatever the case is. It isn't sports specific. It does target a specific energy system. However, the low intensity stuff, I think why it's so important for an endurance athlete is it complements training load, training volume, and gets you to have a discipline around and understanding why the low has to be low in order for the high to be high.
Would it be fair to say that your thought pattern around that, or your thought process around that, is most people haven't developed their aerobic system sufficiently initially, so then you get a lot of low-hanging fruit by doing that, and then after you've developed it to a certain level, you have to do less to maintain that level because of training residuals? Yeah,
absolutely. But like the sport is anaerobic at the end of the day, but if we can decrease the stage at which you enter anaerobic capacity or anaerobic utilization, it's going to have a positive impact on performance. And that's my train of thought with it. You know, so someone might say to you, so you're telling me that the work that you do doesn't directly complement that specific performance? Correct. But it complements training load. It complements the overview. It complements the goal. And if it contributes to your overall goal, it's going to complement your performance. So I believe there's a massive requirement for aerobic conditioning in a lot of sports across the board. Anything less than kind of a 400 or 800 meter repeats. Still, you look at the studies, they'll show you that when aerobic conditioning is applied to training regimes, the profile will grow.
I think it's an interesting one as well, because the people that do understand the value in doing aerobic work and they have developed their aerobic system and they get to that high level, they typically enjoy it a lot. So sometimes they neglect the more sports specific or task specific side of things. Whereas what we're talking about here, from the sounds of our conversation is you have to do both. You can't do one or the other.
No.
And then the other side of that is other people say, oh, well, it's not sport specific, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
But what is sport specific other than the sport itself? Like there are things that are task specific. And if you look at a team sport, for example, like team sports are typically running based sports, running in which you will, for 60% of the game, use the aerobic system. So therefore going out for a run on the pitch is fairly task specific to the sport, even though that there's no football involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what they struggle to get, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And it can be difficult, and I can understand it to a degree, why people don't necessarily want to do it. Now, I wouldn't personally have my clients doing bike work, as an example, or row work, unless they were injured. So if I know for a reason that the impact on running is going to be down, let's put you on the bike and let's get you ticking along. Heart rate's going to be lower. We're going to have you recovering. It's building this engine, so to speak, in regards to getting some form of training session done. Does it psychologically complement them? As an athlete, they just want to train. So if I can get you to do some task because of an injury that you get a stimulus and you get a buzz and you're happy and you accept it, then it's worked.
It's a microdose, essentially. Like you're just microdosing aerobic conditioning into the season, and particularly in season with GAA, because they'll be on pitch 3-4 times a week. They can't really afford to be going on feet conditioning another day of that week if they've already played maybe 2 games and trained twice. So then it's a value to put them on.
Or you have your athlete that does 3-4 pitch sessions a week, still wants to do a sub 20-minute 5K on his other day. You know? Why
is my question. Like,
because they want to. It's an ego thing,
yeah.
You know, or it's a goal. But when we describe that the 5K is having a knock-on effect on the quality of the training that you're doing, that's when they're like, oh, okay.
But that's my question, not to you. My question is to them. Why do you want to run that 5K 20 minutes? Because you're playing a match next week, and it's the match that matters. It's not your 5K that you're running by yourself. It's because of that scarcity mindset that you're thinking, oh, I need to run a 5K 20 or a 20-minute 5K so that I can go in feeling confident into the game. Whereas the work hasn't been done for that game in this week. The work has been done, as we've touched on, for the whole podcast, like the last year. So doing that session, that tough session coming up to the game, isn't going to impact on the game in a positive way in any way. It's probably, if anything, going to have a negative effect. And I had a player say to me last year coming into the championship, why didn't we do any blowouts like in the week or the 2 week before our game? I was like, well, we're at the very end of a very long season. He didn't do a high amount of training during COVID. He just did loads of running, no strength and conditioning. So when we got back to pitch, we were suffering different injuries here or there. So why would we have done something just to keep your mind right when there was 5 other lads on the team that are struggling with fitness levels, struggling with injury, etc. And that's the challenge when you're working with groups over individuals. And I suppose that's why you try to pass a lot of responsibility onto the individual. Is that a challenge when you're getting that to a coach, say that you're saying to the coach, look, we're going to trust these guys to go out and do this work themselves. You don't need to batter them in training.
Look, it's something that I haven't encountered a lot. Like, this is the first GA club I worked with. We did back in the day when I think it was called NADA, the National Athletic Development, with the Dublin panel, the minors. We did testing with them. We did some work with Vincent's a couple of years ago. But this is an area that's still massively untapped. So I haven't met that resistance because I haven't done it. You know, this is the coaching team in Vallymount really wanted to buy into this, and Dave and the rest of the crew were like, look, the guys are going to buy into this, and they track their runs. They spoke to them daily or weekly in regards to getting the runs done, and the guys have seen the success of it now and have pushed on.
In an ideal scenario, would you like to have not control over, but even like a contribution to the team trainings and what they do in the team training, so that you can control the intensities that they're working on and optimize the other runs?
It depends the quality of the coaching team, I suppose. You know, like if I know that the coaching team are clued in and they understand the why, then I don't necessarily need to have that much control. But if it is put on me where they're like, look, the guy's fitness is based on what you do, absolutely, then I have to play a role. And then it goes with other sports. Like I've backed out of high profile training camps on really high profile MMA athletes because they're not listening to what I'm saying. And then when we get the buy-in, they bring me back, we get the success.
That seems to be a challenge, particularly with individual sport athletes, is they want you to tell them what to do, but then when you tell them what to do, they don't want to do it.
Yeah, look, that's the bad. There is some very, very, very good athletes out there that have trusted me with their profile development for 10 years. And they literally, like I would, and I'm always someone that says, if I'm employing you or I'm putting my faith in you, I'm going to listen to what you say, regardless of what I think. If you're the expert in your field and you tell me to do something, I go and do it. And that's based on my trust with you. I have a group of athletes, high quantities of them, that trust what I ask them to do, and they get the results. You know, like we've been quite critical of the majority, which is fair to an extent, but there is some very, very good athletes in this country that buy into the process and reap the result, reap the reward with some really good high-level athletes in this country that are just going to keep improving. You know?
And at the same time, the book doesn't just stop with you in terms of your work with them. They have other coaches that have to work with them too. So do you like to collaborate with those coaches, and what kind of qualities do you like to see in those coaches, be it strength and conditioning, be it a nutritionist, be it a sport coach, etc.?
I love working with other coaches. However, I think that other coaches, not other coaches, but you've encountered it. So people will think that you're stepping on their toes, you're invading on what they're telling the athlete to do. I never, ever, if you come into this office and you present to me and you tell me you have a nutritionist, you have a strength and conditioning coach, you have an X, Y, and Z, I'm like, brilliant, let's set up a Zoom call.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let's talk about you. So if I can speak to all the people within your team to make you a better athlete based on my physiological findings, I'm not going to tell them how to do their job. I'm just going to give them the in-depth knowledge on their athlete that will make them a better athlete based on my experience. So I will interpret the data better than the athlete will. And I'll say, my advice is that we do X, Y, and Z. There you go. And if you want to fall back on me and ask me about the data, come to me. But there's many coaches that go, no, I'm not talking to him. I understand that. I don't need him to tell me what it is. I'm not telling.
They don't realize that you're just trying to provide them with information.
And like me to try and steady that and get that through to the athlete. Like I'm not stepping on their toes here. Yeah. I'm not telling them how to do their job. I'm telling them how to understand and interpret physiology. That's all I'm doing. You know, I'll make some recommendations and that's it. And the good coaches, and there's a core group of various different clients or coaches that I'll have touched base with over the years that I know they're in great hands when they deal with that coach. And I'll be like, all right, I'll speak to your coach. We'll organize behind the scenes. What I tend to do with a lot of the coaches is voice note them. So Kevin English, a running coach, Mick Kyo, Jer Redmond, triathlon coaches, I'll voice note them based on their client. Less than a minute. This is my findings. This is what I think needs to happen with this guy. Buy into this. Ring me if you need anything. What do you think of that? What do you think of this? Yeah, let's go. Evan Lynch, nutrition, sports phone nutritionist. He'd send clients up to me. What do you think of that? There you go. Send him on his way. So we're linking in and communicating within the field. Lads that do S&C, a lot of the PTs here will, like Lee Doherty, based here, he'll send a lot of his clients to me. We'll look at metabolism function. We'll look at eating habits. I'll speak to the client. Lee will come into the room and we'll hash it all out. And then he gets the information that he needs to know on his client. I get the information that they need to know. And we work together as a group. And when we work together as a group, we get much better success rather than trying to go on your own way. You know?
It's a client-centered approach, and opening a dialogue is the most powerful thing, or the most important thing, really, because as you just said there, when you give information to the athlete, you don't know how that athlete is going to deliver that to the other practitioner, be it their physio, be it their strength and conditioning coach, nutritionist, etc. And they could say to their sport coach, oh, I was told I'm not allowed to do any running this week. Yeah. And then you actually talk to the person, say the physio or whatever, that said that. It's like, oh no, well, I didn't say that at all.
Or even something as simple as, if they have them pacing slightly higher than what they should be, something as simple as like take 10 seconds a kilometer off that. Okay, grand. Brilliant.
And it's as easy as a voice note as well. But sometimes when you send those voice notes or you send those messages, as you said, it can be a little bit of apprehension because people are uncomfortable. They think that you're trying to take all of the ownership for the client, for yourself or something. You're trying to devalue the work that they're doing, whereas really you're just trying to provide them with information so that they can optimize what they're doing.
That's it. Provide the information. That's all I'm doing. At the end of the day, that's what I am doing, especially when clients come in that have coaches. Like, so I'm like, what we need to do is we need to deliver the information I've given you to your coach. I need to make sure that you understand it. And one of the things athletes can come in, I'm like, to understand that? They're like,
not really.
I'm just going to send it to my coach. I'm like, no, you need to understand it, you know, because then the buy-in and the understanding of adaptation and everything that goes with it, you know. But look, that's the nature of the business. This is the enjoyment. This is the challenge. And there's certain people that will come in and mention certain coaches, and I'll say, look, they're not going to take what I have to say on board because that's the way they are.
An important point to note as well is we might be providing information a lot as well, but sometimes we're getting information sometimes from the coach that we won't have any understanding around, say, tactical, technical stuff. Like, absolutely. When I'm with the GA club, the lads will ask me sometimes after a match, well, what did you think? And I was like, he was running well, like he got through a lot of running, high speed running, etc. I was happy, no injuries. What do you think about the match? Oh, I didn't, because it's not my place. What do you think we should do differently? I don't know. Yeah. Ask the sport coach. That's not my point. Like, and then equally, if you're speaking to a sport coach as a strength and conditioning coach, sometimes they'll just send the athletes to you and say, get them strong and conditioned. Strong and conditioned for what? Like, what are we going to do? How is the athlete going to perform at their sport? How do we want to play? Are we playing a fast game? Are we playing a slower game? Are we playing a press? Are we not playing a press? Are we sitting back? Are we playing a physical game? We need all this information to develop a good training program. And that's information that helps us. And because it helps us, it then in turn helps them.
Yeah, it's just communication.
That's it. And it's missed. But anyway, we've done a lot of communicating here now, so we're going to move on to the quickfire questions. So the first one is proudest achievement to date.
Last week, the company was 11 years old, but I've also got a 6-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl to their ages, so I presume that has to be up there. But yeah, look, the company to 11. 10 was a massive milestone. I set the company up in the middle of a recession at 24 years of age, and 11 years later, I'm here, having gone through a very tough time with COVID. I closed down for 7 months, but the company to the level it is and the high level of service that I deliver has to be the most achievable or proudest moment.
Has it gone according to what you thought it would, the path that you thought it would when you were 24, or has there been so many changes?
Do you know what? Probably in the naivety side of things, like I didn't have a 10-year vision.
No.
I was jumping in, having traveled for quite some time to give this a go and work hard and willing to do what needed to get done to get to where I am. Has it gone the way it's gone? Like, the last 2 years have been very tough in terms of the growth of the company. However, I look back at it very fondly, you know what I mean? Like, I spend significantly more time with my kids than I wouldn't have. We used to go out on adventures every day and seeing them grow in that sense. And people talk about COVID being very bad. From a business perspective, yeah, but look, this is life, you know, this is what I want to do. This is the journey that I'm on. And to get to where I've got to, will have stepping stones in them, and I'm willing to take and accept and take any challenge head on, you know, because the company will continue to grow.
I think a 10-year plan is just, you can't even fathom how long 10 years is really. Like, sure, you just said, like, your kids are 6 and 4, like, you can't even imagine when they're going to be 16 and 14, I'd say.
No,
so do you now have even a 5-year plan, or a 4, 5, 3?
Not on paper, not I have to achieve X, Y, and Z.
But you have a vision.
My head, I have a vision. Like, I just purchased my 3rd testing unit last week, and corporate wellness is starting to resume. For 2 years, corporate wellness is gone. Corporate wellness is a massive part of my company. Was 2019, I did 47 corporates. I've done 1 since. So the resumption of bringing in an awareness around corporate wellness, providing high-level testing, considerably more available around the country. And then I graduated last year or 2 years ago as a nutritional therapist, and I'm just developing, and I'm really only starting my life as a nutritional therapist. So I want to grow that, and I've just developed a software which I believe will be the first thing that I will be able to earn money with on asleep. Like there's a product that I'll be able to rent and deliver at a very, very high level that isn't specific to testing. So there is visions for me, you know what I mean? Am I going to stop testing? No. Should I stop testing at the quantity that I am? Yes. So getting good staff and delivering it, but I'll never stop testing.
But you have a plan then. It's it's not time bound yet. And it's not, maybe you don't have the numbers yet, which is funny for a man that is all about numbers. That you don't have the numbers.
But I think, again, this is probably just thinking on the spot. If I said I wanted to do 2,000 tests by this time next year and I haven't done them, what does that mean? Is the company not successful? No, I want to continue to grow the company at the rate that it is. I want to continue to deliver the service at the high quality it is, and I want to enjoy it. Like I come into work every day smiling. I buzz around this place, you know, and people are always saying how happy I am, and I don't want that to change. And if that's by me driven by a parameter that I don't achieve, sure, what's the point?
That's a very rational way of thinking about it. And it's a bit longer than a usual quickfire question. But
Sorry.
No, but I'm happy that it was. I think that's given great insight to everybody. The second quickfire question is favorite athlete of all time.
I don't know. I really don't know. I like the longevity of certain athletes, the likes of LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Ronaldo, and you look at the quality of every little aspect of their life. Their sleep, their nutrition. Yes, they're in a very, very privileged position where they can pay to have such high level, but the dedication to their art is admirable in that sense. You know, Chris Froome is a cyclist, looking at Usain Bolt, whatever. I don't have a specific athlete. What I love about athletes is their dedication to their sport and to their art. You know?
Why is it not Gareth Barry?
Well, where do you want to start? When he left and went to City? No, yeah, Gareth Barry, Martin Larson, Paul McGrath, let's go.
Follow it on, favorite obscure footballer or footballing moment?
Footballing moment, I've been lucky enough to travel to various different football events. We went to Cyprus with my family when we won 1-0, 30,000 Irish travelling fans went over. I went to Villa against City. And we won 4-2 on the way to the airport. I sat beside a City fan. He told me he feared for their future. And then the next day they were bought. Favorite footballer.
It's a great story.
Yeah, the next day they were bought by the Sheikh, and you know, like he thought they were getting relegated that year. We beat them 4-2. It was crazy. But favorite footballer at the moment has to be Philip Coutinho. Like that, I know we spoke off camera. I've been privileged to look at the best footballers in the world in person. And like you spoke about Rafinha, I was over at Villa when we beat Southampton 4-0 there a couple of weeks ago, and seeing that magician just do the simple things or the difficult things look so easy was magic.
Do you know what's really interesting about that as well? As I said, Rafinha and Phillips, who was watching at the weekend, the really good players don't actually move that much.
No.
They're in the right position, so they're very efficient.
Yeah.
Talking about aerobic system, they don't need to go into anaerobic because they're in the right position, and their sprints and their short bursts of intensity that they make are the right ones at the right moment, so they don't have to do many of them. They used to say if Paolo Maldini said if he had to make the tackle, he'd already failed. So
right position, right time.
It's all about up there.
Read the game so well.
Our job is the other stuff, the physical, I suppose. You haven't been reading any books lately, you've said off camera, but would you be able to give our listeners maybe one book that you read in the last 24 months regarding performance that you took some great lessons from?
Physical or mental performance?
Either or.
A book that changed my life, The Chin Paradox. Overnight, it was a change in me. I felt it in terms of understanding the mind and reaction. Not that I have a bad temper, but I could fly off the handle a bit much to situations that were uncontrollable. I've learned to manage that. I can only control the controllables. And if it's away from that, there's nothing I can do about that. And it's something that's often complimented, or not complimented, but spoken to me about. It's like, why are you so not uptight about that situation? I'm like, there's nothing I can do about it. And I've learned, like, I traveled to Belfast a couple of weeks ago, and we had a full weekend of testing, and one of the machines went down. I couldn't test. I had to cancel the whole day. No, I was annoyed about it in regards, but there's nothing I could do about it. You look back a few years ago, I would have been at 90, you know what I mean? Driving home, white knuckle, angry, irritable, you know, I just apologize to the clients and just get on with it, you know. And the fellow that wrote the Chin Paradox, his name's just slipped my mind. He did one also about the developing mind. So the relationship on kids' development, you know. So a simple example, my kids walking in the road will walk into everybody. And they'll walk into everyone in the supermarket. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? Why? But then he speaks about that the kids don't have spatial awareness till they're 6 or 7. So now I'm like, what are you walking into my kid for? You know? But just in terms of the reaction.
Some lads still don't have spatial awareness at 27.
The Chin Paradox.
Yeah, that's the second time that's been that.
Yeah, or Who Moved My Cheese?
I haven't read that one.
Very, very, very small book. I think only about 100 pages long, about how your goals, use the example of if I had a 10-year plan and I didn't achieve it, your cheese is going to get moved due to the nature of life.
Yeah.
So Who Moved My Cheese and the Chin Paradox.
Okay. What's the biggest thing you've learned in the last 12 months?
The biggest thing I've learned in the last 12 months. I have massive faith and confidence in what I do and belief in my own ability to perform my task as a sports performance specialist, and just trusting and believing that, like, it's been a rough 12 months. We're back now. 12 months is probably the wrong thing, but just faith and belief in what I do and trusting my process. Like, have I grown massively or what? What was the question?
The last 12 months, what's the biggest lesson you've learned?
Again, just the lesson that I've learned is trust and trust and belief in my own self, and it will return to where the testing levels were, you know.
And then a follow-on question, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
I'm massive in terms of self-confidence and self-belief and trusting, not your gut, but having that trust in what you believe is right and not being afraid to go away from the crowd. And that would be the message I'll deliver. It's a message I'll deliver to my kids as well, like is trust yourself and have that self-confidence and the self-awareness and the self-belief to go out on a limb and try something that you wouldn't necessarily or would be looked upon as not the right thing to do. So that confidence and belief in yourself, I think, is something that I'll always tell any of my own kids or family or nieces or nephews or anyone that I mentor. It's that belief and the quality that you have. People often undervalue themselves, and it's something that I'm a massive advocate of, is that you should be charging what you're worth and don't undervalue and understand your worth, because people will walk all over you if given the opportunity. You put a value and a worth on yourself and you believe it, you will reap the rewards for it.
Thanks a million, John. There's something in there for everyone, and a few deadlifts as well to do.
Yeah, apologies, we're outside the Olympic lifting area here.
No, we're in the thick of it, so we're not going to apologise really. But if you're tuning into the Petey Performance podcast, you have to expect a few deadlifts. But thanks for coming on. That was brilliant.
Thank you very much.